All right, kind enough to join us, a proud alum, as we say it all the time, of The Ohio University, founded in 1804, first college west of the Allegheny Mountains in the United States of America. Not some tired Miami grad. Our good buddy Jay Morrison. Jay, how are you today, man? I mean, does it ever stop for you? You go through an entire season, day after day after day, and here we are in the NCAA tournament. They announce the pairings. Games have already started, and the NFL is still king.
It does not stop. And because the Bengals make these deep runs, I mean, you do get little breaks here and there. And that little break from first round playoff loss till the combine, now that's out the window because it seems like you go straight from the AFC Championship game or the Super Bowl to the combine. And as soon as the combine ends, you're in free agency and then draft. And oh, by the way, the schedule release is even a huge deal that leads up to the draft. It is that about mid-June to the end of July. That's when you put your feet up and say, please slow down. Nobody do anything stupid. Nobody get arrested where you'd like to take that little break and refresh. And it's great having Paul Dehner on Jr. on the beat with me as well, because we can. He took a week off during the season. You get to take those little breaks and try to refresh, but the NFL just churns and churns and churns.
I mean, before we get into the Bengals stuff, I mean, Jay, it's just mind-boggling to those of us who have been blessed and fortunate enough to make a career out of this kind of thing, covering sports. Man, I don't know when it officially flipped. You're a lot smarter. You've forgotten more about this stuff than I do. But I don't know where it flipped, where all of a sudden, I mean, it's not even close what the NFL is compared to everything else. I would argue compared to everything else combined.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think, fantasy football really kind of took it to another level. And then I don't know, there was illegal gambling. Now there's legal gambling. I don't know if it's social media or just, it seems like fans are so much smarter now that they used to just kind of trust this stuff, this off-season stuff. And they're like, okay, talk to me in July when camp starts. And now they're creating their own ledgers and they're making their own free agent signings and they're doing their own scouting, watching film of the players. It's just, I think that the fans, I don't know, it's a chicken and egg thing. Is it because the NFL got so popular that the fans dove in so deep, or if it's the fans got so much smarter and the NFL embraced that and said, hey, let's turn every single little thing we do into an event and just dominate the calendar throughout the whole year?
Yeah, it's amazing. Okay, I said yesterday, and I asked the question again today. There's no doubt about it. The Bengals and the Browns and Duke Tobin and Zach Taylor and the coaching staff, everybody, scouts, they have a plan. But as I sit here as a Bengals fan, as a Cincinnati kid, and I look at the last 3 days of free agency, and I say to myself, is it misfire one, Von Bell? You knew Bates wasn't coming back. Is it misfire two, Perine's gone? Now is it misfire 3? Hayden Hurst is gone. And we haven't even brought up the offensive line. Is there reason to be concerned about what's happened so far for Bengal fans?
I maybe a little, but this was their plan all along. I mean, we tried on our Hear That Podcast Growl, and we tried to prepare people for this, that this was the approach they were going to take, that they're going to let the market come to them. And that they've always kind of had this. I just tweeted this quote out, a long quote from Duke Tobin about, setting the values on players and not deviating from that and not panicking and not getting into bidding wars. And if another team's willing to pay a guy more, then they're going to thank him for his service and let him go on and trust their scouting and their coaching and their ability to develop players and just keep that churn going. And the big one for me was Von Bell. I really did think they were going to bring him back, but we've seen this, and this was a lesson learned in 2018. The very first story I wrote for The Athletic when I joined them was about the Bengals sunk over $100 million into Carlos Dunlap and Geno Atkins on the same day. 2 massive extensions on the same day, this really rare thing, and it bit them. because both those guys were on the wrong side of 30. They learned from that. And it's not that they're saying Von Bell isn't good anymore, but you play the percentages and you say they're just not going to pay a guy a third contract because injuries are more likely to happen as you get closer to 30. And then the one thing that nobody can expect is just that drop off. Players don't just kind of gradually decline. It's almost like they're going on fine, and then it's just this plateau, and they just fall off, and you don't see it coming. And they're just not willing to do that. And they took the money they were going to give Von Bell and turned around and gave it to a younger guy in Jermaine Pratt, a second contract, still in his mid-20s. He's going to be up for a third contract before he's 30. I don't think he's going to get a third one from the Bengals. It's just the way that they're willing, that they want to operate right now. And the kind of the money quote within the quote from Duke Tobin was, just because you pay a guy more doesn't mean he plays better. And they would have loved to have gotten Hayden Hurst back. I haven't seen the numbers yet on what Carolina is paying him, but it's a 3-year deal. I'm sure it's a lot more than what the Bengals were willing to pay him. So they just trust that they can bring in new guys. There's still a lot that I think Hurst was only the third tight end to sign. There's still a lot of safeties out there. There's still a lot of tight ends out there, and you've got the whole draft to go still. And the one thing that and I'm sorry I'm going long on this, but
no.
The one thing I think is a great comparison, and the Bengals haven't voiced this, but I think it's what's in their mind, is that Joe Burrow has a Michael Jordan quality to him where he makes those around him better. And they are willing to bank on that. And it's almost a recruiting tool, because you look at Von Bell came in here for his second contract. He's getting more in his third contract. Samaje Perine came in here, kind of a journeyman. He's getting paid huge after playing here. They're saying to these mid to lower level tier guys that maybe aren't getting the money they wanted to get, hey, come play for the Bengals. You'll have success. You'll play well, and you'll get an even bigger deal after this. I mean, to go and play in the postseason and play well and be a part of a winning team, it can have value down the road. And they want to get these guys with the chip on their shoulder that aren't getting the money they thought they were going to get in free agency.
Do you think that well, the safety situation, certainly the answer would be yes. They're going to have to do something. You're not going into a season where your goal is to get to and win the Super Bowl. At least I wouldn't think, with basically two rookies back there starting at safety. So, but then now the Hurst thing, the Perine thing, and we'll get to the offensive line in a minute. But does the Perine thing and the Hayden Hurst thing, do you think it directly affects their draft? You mentioned that there are guys out there at those positions you can find. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But do you think that it will change what they might have wanted to do or think they're going to do in the draft?
Possibly. More so with running back. I know I did a 7-round mock. Paul Dehner did a 7-round mock. He had them taking a running back in the second round. I was under the assumption they were going to get Perine back, and I still thought that they would, and I still do think they are going to sign a free agent. And Jamal Williams is on everybody's mind right now. The guy from Detroit, because Detroit just pivoted and took Cincinnati native David Montgomery, so they're going to let Jamal go. 17 touchdowns last year, 16 in the red zone. This team really struggled to run the ball in the red zone. He would be a great fit. So you go get a guy in free agency, and then you draft one. So I think that was always the plan, to draft a running back. Just a matter now it becomes a little bit higher, that the Mixon thing is still out there. They're not going to make a move on him until they have to, till they see what they have. I'd be shocked if he plays this year on the salary that he's due, $12.8 million. They're going to ask him to take a pay cut. He's probably going to say no. So that's why you get one in free agency. They just re-signed Travion Williams today too. That's just a depth piece, but another guy in that running back room. And then with tight end, it's kind of the same deal. I'm sorry, you said safety, right? There are guys out there that, yes, that you have to get a veteran there. And I think a name that everybody should kind of have on their mind is Julian Love. He's going to turn 25 next month, and He last year was his first year as a starter with the Giants, and that's important because James Betcher, the Bengals linebacker coach, was the Giants defensive coordinator when they drafted Julian Love, and Lou Anarumo had done some work on Julian Love before he came here. That was that 2019 draft, so he came here as the D coordinator. As far as tight end in the draft, Brian Callahan said at the combine, he kind of threw some cold water on the idea of them taking a guy early in the draft. They prefer more to get one of those mid-round guys that they can develop. They said it's one of those positions that's really hard to come in and be good right away, and they want to find a guy with traits that they can develop. I think they probably had in the back of their mind they were going to get Hayden Hurst back, so maybe this does change that a little bit. But everything that happens has somewhat of a ripple effect of what they're going to do in the draft.
I'm watching Kansas City, and look, it's not to dismiss Buffalo or anybody else for that matter, but certainly the last two championship games, that's the team you've played. Kansas City wants to get to the Super Bowl last year, losing in the championship game. They let some guys go to free up some cash. And I think a lot of fans on the outside look at it. I'm included in this group. And, you see the way Kansas City is going out, and they might lose a guy, but, man, they plug that hole immediately on the offensive line, right? And they're able to spend a little cash here and there. I don't know if they've taken a step back from last year, a step forward last year, maintained from last year. They're defending Super Bowl champs. But it makes me think that the contract that Mahomes signed, which was spread out, and certainly very different than a Deshaun Watson, although he just redid his deal a little bit. But, Mahomes isn't making $65 million starting next year like Deshaun Watson is. It makes me wonder if maybe Joe Burrow and the people who represent him or the Bengals on their side aren't looking at that whole thing in Kansas City and saying, man, that's the kind of contract we got to find a way to structure to keep Burrow here and be able to go out and get some other pieces. Is that fair?
I think it is. I mean, last year at the pre-camp luncheon, Mike Brown brought up Patrick Mahomes' contract unprompted. I mean, I think that is ideally the kind of structure they would like to put in place. Will Burrow? I mean, we don't know. That side holds things so close to the vest that not really sure what they're thinking. But just knowing Joe and the kind of guy he is and how he's all about football and all about winning, I think he realizes that he can still get paid and do it in a way that they can manage the cap. I mean, it is amazing what Kansas City's doing. I mean, you win 2 Super Bowls in 4 years. That's when the pieces you're supposed to start losing these guys, and they did. They lose Orlando Brown, but then they go make a huge signing in Jawan Taylor, and then Charles Omenihu. They signed a quality edge rusher that you don't normally see Super Bowl champions making these big splashes in free agency. Usually, it's the guys walking away. So it is a very, very interesting comp, and something that I think a lot of the Bengals and the Bengals fans should be paying attention to, because that could be the Bengals' future once we see how this Burrow deal shakes out and how it's structured, more importantly than what the total dollars are.
All right, I don't want to take up any more of your time. You're very busy. Before we let you go, if you're a Bengals fan, you're hanging out here the last couple of years, and you've pointed out regularly in your stuff in The Athletic and on your podcast that this is going to be a different free agency time for the Bengals compared to the last 2 years. Defense 2 years ago, offensive line last year. Are you expecting anything the next 48, 72 hours from the Bengals?
48, maybe 72, definitely. We had Jeff Hobson from Bengals.com on our podcast last week, and we played this game. Whereas, okay, when will the Bengals sign their first outside free agent? Will it be Monday through Thursday? Will it be over the weekend, Friday to Monday? Or will it be after next Monday? And we all said they're going to ruin our weekend and they're going to sign somebody on the weekend. It just feels like Friday, Saturday's the day. You see the top guys ticking off, and it's going to get into that mid-tier where the guys that they like, that they think they get something out of for a good price. And I think Friday, Saturday is when you're going to see them get their first outside free agent. And it's not going to be anybody that's going to wow you, but it's going to be a piece. just look at what they've done in past years. Even DJ Reader, a lot of Bengals fans didn't even know who he was when they signed him. But Von Bell comes in and you get him on a really cheap deal, and he plays the best football of his career, and now he's getting paid. And Cheeto wasn't a very expensive guy, and Mike Hilton wasn't an expensive guy. This is where they have really thrived in free agency. Even last year, Kappa and Karras, they had the biggest need they had to address. They did it 5 minutes into the start of free agency, but they didn't get the top tier splash guys. They got guys that they identified as quality starters on a solid to / bargain price, and Kappa and Karras both worked out great for him too. It's what you're going to see, and it's going to start. I would put it. Let's say I'll put the over under at 1 p.m. Friday, and you can guess whether it'll be before that or after that. But I think that's the best target line in my mind.
All right, if you had to go 1, 2, 3, and look, things you negotiate with guys, takes a little longer for some other guys. But if you were a betting man and you were to say, okay, their number one thing they're going to sign is this position, and then number 2 that position, what would 1 and 2 be?
I think I would say safety would be number 1 because it is so important, such an area of need. I think running back is 2, seeing the writing on the wall with Mixon, but there's still a lot of those guys out there. Maybe 2 for me would be an offensive lineman. There's still, and the guy that I've got pegged is Jermaine Illuminor, started for the Raiders last year. Probably can get him for $3.5-4 million a year. I think right tackle in particular, but offensive line overall, you have a question about your long-term left tackle and your long-term future at right tackle. This is the time. Just throw as many darts at it as possible. Sign a guy like Illuminor in free agency. Draft one. See what Carmen, if he can progress. Wait and see where LC is with his rehab. Just stack that room with as many guys as possible. Let them fight it out in training camp, and may the best man win.
All right, did you fill out a bracket for the basketball tournament?
So this is my favorite time of year. I run all kinds of March Madness pools, and it gets really time consuming because those are hard to. They're not your standard bracket ones. There's the unique fantasy ones where you pick players, and I just love it. So I always wait till the night before the tournament starts. So tonight I feel as soon as the bracket came out, I filled one, just my instant reaction, and I took Purdue in that one. I just watching them in the Big Ten. Edey is such a freak in the middle.
Yep.
He's so hard to deal with. And what I love about Purdue is that team. Every youth basketball coach that teaches defense and boxing, all the fundamentals, they've bought in. They listen to Matt Painter, and they do all the little things right. And they've got great defenders. They've got other guys that can score. They've never done it before, but maybe this is the year. I have a hunch that Purdue might take it this year.
I wouldn't be surprised. That's a really, really good team. We thank you, Jay, so much for your time. Thank you, and the best of everything, my friend. Have a good weekend.
All right, thank you, Tom.
All right, Jay Morrison from The Athletic. Great to have him and his insight